Ba-da-ba. Oh God. Well, I'm not done. Melamb. Oh Lord. What is a melamb? Me. Me, I am. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Me. LOL. Hey, check this out. uh, quiet. It's me. Hello, welcome back to my unboxing video. Today we will be unboxing cutting board. Also, drink. Everything's going smoothly and fine. And it's not even like 86 degrees in here. So that's a bonus. God. I mean, it what am I talking about? Literally anything I. The weather. I want to talk about the weather. No, I should say what's happening. Oh, because I forgot what was happening. That's why. So, I don't know if anybody's seen Gravity Falls, but today I was worried it was 86 degrees. No, it's definitely not 86 degrees. It's only like 90 or something. Um, but I don't know if you've seen Gravity Falls. Today is Summerween, a fictional holiday in which you dress up as characters and also cut open watermelon. So that's what I'm doing. Also, wait, yes, I do. Hold on. No, this is everything. I didn't find a thermometer, but I did find a cat. However, she hates being picked up. Here. There you go. Not Summerween. Missy, how could you do that? We got open watermelon. That's my other camera. Look, professional. Excuse me. The watermelon's open. a good start because we have to open the watermelon. Very good setup here. Oh god, my food. God. Troublemaker. Troublemaker. What are you doing, huh? She's like, you picked me up and got me in here, alright? Have fun staring at the sea. Oh my god, there's melon juices all over the place. Oh god. Hey guys. So the reason why that happened, the reason why this keeps happening, because I don't own a table. Ignore that. I don't own a table. So I've just got a couple of cardboard boxes underneath. Not going to play. Hold on. Never seen a watermelon before. So, literally in stitches. Where'd she go? Look at her. She's like, what the hell is this? Watermelon juice. Listen, I'll clean it up later. I own a mop. There. That's interesting. Help me. Help me. Not melon juices. Laughing so hard. Don't rip your stitches. Oh god, I can't breathe. I'm losing. Crying. Oh, disaster of a dream. I barely even started, and people are already dying and losing. Normal Tuesday for me. So how do I fix this? I think it was a little bit too tall anyway. So if we just get one big box. That one big box. Now I think all of my bots are safe. Don't worry about it. Oh god. Oh god. You like my sheets? Have you ever seen Hit Halloween movie? All theme Hit Halloween movie. I don't remember the name of it. The one with the three witches and they come back to life and they're trying to kill people so that they can be young. It's like the Halloween movie. Can you hear me? I'm not talking into the microphone. Just realized. What is it called? It's like no, I don't remember. I don't know the names of things. You sure that? The rainbow trout, at least. They're very colorful fish. God. Oh, there's watermelon. Oh, I forgot. Did I put this on there? Hocus Pocus. Yeah. Hocus Pocus. Well, did you know that in Hocus Pocus, they have a bed, and these sheets on that bed, ones, but they are. So that's why I use them as a tablecloth. Yep. Put the camera down. My God, I love this. Okay. Okay. So here's the melon. It's a Premier melon, seedless. Very nice. That's gonna stay on there. You know what? It's a good thing. Have fun staring at the ceiling for like half of this. That was a workout. It's like 90 degrees in here. I mean, 86. I don't know how hot it is. It's hot. Which, like, it would be fine if it was hot, right? And then during the night, it wasn't hot. Take all night. Hot day. Up and I'm like, ugh. And I open all the windows and yeah, this is okay. Yesterday it was 86 degrees outside at 4 a.m. At 4 a.m. 90 degrees. It's definitely not. Check. Yeah. So it's only like okay, so it's only like 90 or not 90, sorry. It's only like 80. Get a high of 101 today. That's too many. That's too many. I don't know what it was here because I slept probably like 9. We did? You didn't know? The only way I have of checking the temperature is my fish tank as a thermometer. So it's 82 in the fish tank, which means it's probably warmer in the air. I think is how that works. 102 tomorrow. What's the humidity? Does it feel like you're swimming when you're outside? That's what it feels like right now. No, it's like a light hug. Tends to be a bit hotter where I am. Trapped inside, I didn't know. You trapped inside with the air conditioning. This is like the best time possible to get surgery because you're just inside with the air conditioning. I guess if you were trapped inside during the, you're already trapped inside during the winter. Where I am, I'm having 82 in the fish tank. Yeah, he's dying. Poor guy. I should put some ice cubes in there. No, that would be bad. That would be bad. But anyway, so the goal for this stream is to cut open this watermelon. Humidity is always awful. Always awful. It's not always awful. Fluctuate. It doesn't feel like you're being given a big hug from the water, sea, or whatever it is that is humidity. And it's not humid. Like you're so parked. I want to get all this watermelon into here. And carve it. Look. See, this is fine. It's good that it cracked open halfways because now I can just make like 2 little guys, right? 2 little guys here. I'll just flip those back over. I don't like the way that they look. It is 42% right now. Oh my god. I don't know what that means. I'll be honest. I gotta have to put it in my like hug terms. We're making watermelon helmets. Oh my god, I can totally make one of. I want to know what the humidity is here. Now I can make 2. That's what I'm saying exactly. And one of them can be a helmet. I mean, they both can be helmets. Yeah, it's 47% humidity here, which is like a light hug, I'd say. Oh, but I need to get all of the watermelon out from the. Wow, you're a genius. I'm a genius. I was talking to myself there, not any of you. All I got this spoon, and I've got this. I don't have the proper equipment for watermelon carving. I also have a table knife. Yeah, carved. I just. That's fine. This is your favorite stream? I'm quite a fan of the one where I played Minecraft.
6 months, baby.
Thank you very much, that one kid, for 6-month subscription, 3 more months, and we have a child. Remember to name the child. Delicious. Welcome back to my ASMR channel. I was on the ground. Boy, I'm glad you can't see me like close up. Cause I've got juices. What's going on? This is my favorite because it keeps throwing me curveballs. I can't stop laughing. I'm sorry. It's throwing me curveballs too. I mean, I planned all of this. I planned the cat. I watermelon. Trying to sleep, but I saw this. I need to pop in. Thank you very much for popping in, and then go to sleep because you. Work where they don't pay you. Yeah, this is a good angle. Who needs utensils? Who needs utensils?
Mother Fortnite eating the juiciest water mussy.
Mother Fortnite. Thank you for the 50 bits. I forgot that I had. I tweet it out and ask people what they think it is. This one right here. Oh god, this one. Yeah. What is this angle? Should have just said fuck. I did that. I have a profanity sensor because I can put whatever I want. Just replace the profanity, and so I put Fortnite in there. Mother Fortnite. It should have said fuck. Let the bits donations say fuck. No. Bits are not allowed to swear. This is good. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm bored. Fuck. Highlighted fuck. I see it. I see it. The bits will never say fuck. And the watermelon rubber banded it. It exploded. I think that was the same weekend that we got at the homemade trebuchet. Like a normal thing that everybody has. Do you know there's like competitions where you make your own trebuchet? Trebuchet is the thing that throws things really far, but you have to like counterweight it. Whatever, look it up. Trebuchet. They have competitions where people make their own ones of those. Pulling apart the yes, this is Melon ASMR while I talk about trebuchet. I'm getting closer for you. Do they throw the melons? You could throw a melon in a trebuchet. Sick. That's what you can't say that. Oh man. Getting so many diseases. This was definitely on the floor. Oh, yep, that's hair. Hmm. It's not funny. Don't. No, it's not. It's not funny. Bad. No jokes. No jokes. The only joke here. I've run out of space. It's okay. I planned for this. My favorite joke. No. No jokes. You're not allowed to have favorite jokes. Eh. Me and my melons. I'm going to put them in here. This container here. This is the container I use for cleaning. And also to refill the fish tank. And it's also the one that I'm going to be putting watermelon in. And it's definitely washed. God. The barf bucket. I've got a different barf. Don't you even worry. I'm so sticky. Help. Help. The fish tank. Would you prefer it as the fish tank bucket or as the barf bucket? Would you prefer if I had fish in there or if I had barf? Why is it so juicy? Because I'm a good watermelon picker-outer. All right. I'm in the store, slapping the shit out of watermelons. I offered to snag you one from work, but I get in trouble for a barf bucket. You're gonna snag a barf bucket for me? No, I have like 3. Don't even worry. I've got so many barf buckets in my house. Barf bucket is just anywhere. Anywhere you can get barf on. Watching my hand freak out. Wish we had a cat cam. I know. Ran away. You obviously weren't here for the beginning of the stream in which I picked her up and put her on the table and she knocked the table down. And then split open my watermelon in two. Here's a little troublemaker. He got up into the fish tank last night. Speaking of fish, got up there. No, fish are friends, not food. I'll bring the baby back. I have to go. Watermelon. No, she hates me. Tulip's fine because I'm the lightest sleeper in the world. And I woke up and I heard from that direction where the fish tank was. And I'm like, what the fuck? Oh my god, the cat's there. Looking in at my little fish. Is that done? One way to find out. Why have I done this? Oh, why have I done? Why have I done this? I wouldn't do this in real life if I was you. Maybe in like a video game. I'm very sticky now. Life is hell. All right, time for the other one. Oh, please help me. Please help me if you're seeing this. You can help. Only $2 a day prevents situations like this from happening. I wish you could see the amount of juices. It's on my glasses. At least it tastes good, right? This is the bit that was on the floor. I can tell. This is going good. I want to skip this song, but somebody else log into my Spotify and control the music. No. No. Yeah. I put a cover, a lid on the fish tank so she can't get to it anymore. This is my evil wizard music. Why? What's going on?
I'll find a way to swear.
It's swear. Swear. That's not a swear. Thank you for trying, but that's not a swear. Mother fuker? Fuker? You're fuker? You just have to come up with a swear that they haven't censored, that they haven't thought of, and that won't get me banned on. Please. Oh God. And one meant a swear word. Can I vote that it's not fuker? I just don't like the way it sounds. Another one?
Cat.
Right, you tried to say piss. Say piss and it said cat instead. Thought of that one before. Okay, is piss a swear? With your body. Not even a swear, I would say. I would say it's not a swear because it is my. It's almost helmet level. I genuinely need to sleep. Good night, Asher. It's and the resubscription. Hope you have a good sleep. What do you want the watermelon to say before you go? Very generous. I have 2 watermelons. I don't know if it's the pain meds or what. I could watch this for hours. I would say pain meds make it a lot better for me and for you. Oh my God. Set up this camera instead of just looking at the ground. I just don't have anywhere to set it up. Oh God, oh Lord, oh hell. I just gotta cover them all. Here, water. Drink water. Oh, perfect. This is great. Oh. Also highly entertained. I'm glad to be of entertainment. if I just prop it up with the watermelon, hold on. I'm a genius. Okay. Watermelon cam. No shark at Walmart. Is this a Squishmallow shark? Here you go. Hi. Oh. No. Oh. Oh, everything's going to be so sticky. I put this one here. It'll. The watermelon? This is just watermelon, by the way. Nothing else. Normal amount of watermelon. Little Squishmallow shark. So cool. There's not enough monster in it. Walmart didn't have them. Where are the Squishmallows located? Because next time I go to the store, I can. Kids are. Can't. The stream is. Ooh, I just. No. Wanted to carve open a watermelon. Or preferably a whole one. Send you the list of stores. Well, Walmart's one of them, and I think you mentioned Five Below. I can go look for them. And if I find one, I can tell you. They're sold at so many places. I assume. Isn't I always remember seeing Squishmallows at Walgreens. That for me is like the Squishmallow place, but apparently not. You're about to be our squish plug. No, I'm not a squish plug. That's crazy. I'm just if you want the shark one, like we gotta find it, right? You've done this when you were going to do the thing where you wrap rubber bands around a watermelon. Yes, not me specifically. I was at a Memorial Day weekend at my grandparents' house where we all get together and camp. Very much a sent you the list on Discord. Thank you. I will look at it after I'm done here. To pick up the shark. Yes, send the shark. But we did have a watermelon and we put a bunch of rubber bands around it and then we not even a video of it. Somewhere. I am not looking for that. It's just not worth it. You can just you can go to YouTube and just Google watermelon exploding. This is a good camera angle. Oh god. This one's done. This one's done. Wait, can you try and find me a specific cow? Yeah, send me the cow that you want. A photo of it. If I'm at the store, I can go look. And honestly, stores have air conditioning. Stores have air conditioning. The next time it's 80 degrees out at night, I can't leave anyways because no stores are open. I'm sure I could find 24-hour store somewhere. You are my hero. Me, the hero of this story. And here's my helmet. Here we go. Here we go. Hey guys, welcome back to my video log. Today is day 23 in the trenches. It's very wet out here. This is causing me physical pain. No, it's fine. No, I can't do it. Oh, it's in my eye. Oh, it's in my eye. Okay. That is in my eye. What if I get superpowers from having watermelon in my eye? Because nobody else has ever done it. I'm gonna go wash this out of my eye. Heck, troublemaker. Come in here. Watermelon. Your eye. You're so sick. Yeah, I definitely have watermelon in my hair. It's fine. I hear it's good for it. Good for your hair. Like, watermelon hair. Watermelon hair. I want to. I got it out of my eye. That's it. Otherwise, I'm just gonna be sticky. Right. Oh, now I get to carve it. Oh my god, I completely forgot. Cat can have. All right. How are we carving this watermelon? I almost said pumpkin. Love it when things happen. Now nobody move. Stay up. I think watermelon. Make him a scary little guy. I will. Hold on, I have to Google, is watermelon good for your hair? Okay. Vitamin C. Okay, this is like if you consume it. How do you put watermelon in your hair? Take a few watermelon cubes and discard the seeds with the help of a fork. Mash them up and mix 1 teaspoon of mayonnaise with it. Mix together to make a thick paste. Hold on, I have to go get some mayonnaise. It is great for skin and hair. But eyes. Is watermelon good for your eyes? Improves eye health. Perfect. I have watermelon in my eyes, and they're just gonna get healthier. I'm gonna start seeing better. I'll just get rid of these completely. It'll be like that scene in Spider-Man movie, the good movie. This is amazing. Making him a spooky little guy. I forgot. I think side. Yeah. Not this side. This side. We drawn. I think that if you eat watermelon, not if you. No, I think probably putting it in. Right. Which channel? Arc Stranger. Dark Stranger supports putting watermelon in your eyes. It makes them better. Not sponsored. It's by watermelon. My toner is watermelon. Be fine. Yeah, I'll just be a little sticky. It smells good. See, that is watermelon does smell good. Delicious. You got any watermelon haters out there? You better not. Speak up now. Nothing will happen. I don't like watermelon, little baby. I hate eating watermelon, actually. Get out of here. I needed that. It's fine. Everything's fine. Can't stand it. Is it a texture thing? Like you're fine with the taste of it. You like watermelon tasting things, but you don't like the texture of the watermelon? If so, you're a coward. Anyways, here's what the watermelon looks like. You can't see. He's evil. I like to put salt on my watermelon. So explain that. So yeah, so explain that. How does that work? Like for fun? Like, interesting. I love watermelon cake. I figured as much. That's not allowed. So enjoy the last. Good? You can test that. Guys. What do I need to explain? I don't know. I've never heard of it. So I don't believe. Got some watermelon. Can't see that. I've got some watermelon. Or the juices. Everything's fine. I've got salt. I got out the good stuff too. I'm assuming you don't put a lot on there. Salted, right? No, I hate it. Yeah. Ugh, my grandfather showed it to me when I was like 7. Yeah, I think a 7-year-old could like this. It's very true. Not for me though. Mm. Chili on your watermelon? Really good minus the texture. I don't have any chili. Oh, God. I think it was the salt. I think the salt was the problem. I think I used the wrong kind of. Oh, I'm cutting this open. I hope this works. I like to just eat watermelon the way that it is. What's wrong with watermelon the way that it is? Besides the texture. Get out of the way. This is going the way that I wanted it, the way that I envisioned it in my mind. Really? Nothing bad has happened. Eat it or we all riot. I'd like to distill moonshine inside of watermelons. That would be good. I'm gonna eat the rind. I eat the rind, no problem. Get a sharp knife or a razor. I see the problem is I don't have either a sharp knife or a razor. So all I have is this and a spoon. It'd be like watermelon. I think the process of okay. Got it. Easy. So easy. I just have to harness my inner watermelon. Boom. First bit of my. I use about. It's the only knife that I have. It's the only knife that I have. I only have the butter knife. I don't have any other knife. Happen to your. So, live alone. I just moved out of my parents' house. I don't feel the need to have any. I have one. That's enough. Oh, I don't want the water to fall. I know that the watermelon, but if the water falls, that's like worse. Less sticky. If the water falls over, then I don't have to mop, right? So easy. Knives. Will your parents let you have sharp yes. I'm allowed to have sharp objects. Anymore. I don't have any say over my life. The rebel. Okay. But here's the thing: is I'm doing it just fine with a butter knife, so I don't even need a bigger knife. Also, I can't do that. An epic Joker fan? Yeah, I want to be an epic Joker fan. I watched that movie. I live in a society. Ow. Smiling if I. Hold on. See, if I was using an actual knife, I would. Didn't. Camera's messed up. That's my camera of table. Yeah. Ooh. Can I help you? Oh, that's just Indy getting this. Yeah. Yeah. Time for round two. I know I use a knife. The melons show you who they really are. Alright. Still got watermelon in it. I will eat that. Oh, it's very drippy. I'll fix the camera. Yay. My very useful camera. It's definitely gonna stay up. It's gonna stay here. Ceiling camera. Whoa! Whoa! Ceiling camera. Oh, watermelony hair. Really recommend that. If we get 3 people that want me to go get an egg and break it on my head, I will do it. But only if 3 people said they want to. I don't even know what that says. Skrilla's stream. Sure. I already got watermelon in my, like a little egg of it. My own nose. Scaring myself with my own camera. Oh my god, is he a keychain? Watermelon key. Shark keychain? Watermelon lives matter? You. Them. God. What should this watermelon be? We should have one scary one. Which that one's very scary. And then one, I don't know, a different one. Maybe 2 scary ones. One's done. Just gonna. I'm gonna make a base first. I think my next stream is going to be a tea party. Well, not my next stream, but a stream in the future is going to be a tea party in the woods. I'll take you to the dungeon. I don't have a basement, and I was kicked. Tell us your plan to go outside. Party. Get back into my wizard tower. Or both. Yeah, my plan is to go outside into the woods and then get water and boil it. And then we have like this, except it will camera. It'll be good. And not at all bad. Maybe I'll have a better camera. Never know. Probably not. If you want that, you can follow by it. Another napkin. I don't know if you've ever read Alice in Wonderland, or I guess, which is I think seen the movie and not read the book. Right. Now I think this one right here. What does it? But what does it say? Get my problem. It is. Hold on. I'm gonna put the scariest thing I can think of on. You're gonna be so fucking scared. Now I have to think of something scary. And I decided a while ago that nothing is scary anymore. Except nope. Actually, this is not gonna work because I can't right now. Oh my god, I'm terrified. I'm just kidding. Ignore him. Am I carving a watermelon like a pumpkin? Well, yes. I was going to, Shepherd. We had a bit of an incident, and now I have 2 halves of a whole watermelon, which is not really like carving it like a pumpkin. I mean, if I had a pumpkin, the same thing would have happened. You know, I put the cat on the table, the cat knocks the table over, the pumpkin would have split into 2. But otherwise, yes, I am carving a watermelon. And you got here just in time to decide what I carve into this one, because I'm not carving people into it. I could. Like, I'm capable. But the other one. Here's the other one. Here's the other one. Focus. Oh, my screen is covered in watermelon juice. Probably doesn't help. Thank you. It is a nice helmet. You got a smiley face. I'm about to start crying. I'm about to start something. I don't know. Go wash this off. I'll just think of something. I've got it. Everybody likes. I know the people. I know it, the internet. I've been on there. I know. It's a mess. It's just a mess. Maybe it can be cleaned up and preserved. The helmet? That's not. I don't think so. I wish. That would be sick. I want a helmet for all time. It's just in the juices. There's no juices. This is my water camera. The wrong spot. Oh God. This is fine. How do you preserve a watermelon rind? The only way that I know to preserve, fry it out with salt, and not like a rind. That'd be weird. Probably doable. Oh God. That one. It's fine. It looks normal. Oh God. Damn, how is Wildermyth? I was there for a minute. I was setting up for the round. Oh my God. These are just, they're gonna be, it's fine. Everything's fine. You know, happy little accident and all that. Two down. How do I do this? Actually, how do I do this? Got watermelon. Wildermyth went well. I finished the current chapter and saw no one was in the stream, so I called it there. I'm going to do an entire chapters at once, so the YouTube upload will be more convenient. That makes sense. You could edit them together. Oh, that sounds. Yeah. I was watching. I'm gonna take all of my concentration now. Oh, I just had a G. Only one character got named, still have a few others who aren't named. Is the character that I named still there? I don't know how Wildermyth works. I won a cake decorating competition. Not like this. For the ideal, you'll understand. Dude, the day I won the cake decorating competition, D&D meets Fire Emblem, in case anyone was curious. You can spend channel points to name the characters. That's awesome. Ah, see, the problem was I don't. Which characters was yours? Some of the ones from previous campaign are back. I don't remember the name. It was the cooler one. I remember the name exactly, but I remember it was the cooler one. The luckiest day of my life. It was Cooler Krongus. Yes. Is Cooler Krongus back? The Krongus trio back? Was the lucky? Okay, now I need help deciding. Was the luckiest day of my life the day that I held my breath when passing a graveyard and then found $60 in a Harley Davidson parking lot that I used to take the family to the movies? Or was it the day that I won a cake decorating competition and then also won a raffle drawing for like a cake kit? Because God knows I didn't win the cake decorating competition off a skill. Can you imagine? Okay, now give me a Cooler Krungus was the first legacy character we recruited. Bit of a coward. And he got OG Krungus possessed by a fairy spirit. Get him, Krungus. Get him, Cooler Krungus. God, you're sick. You're fucking killing it out there. I'm so proud of you. Can I name another character then? This is never had a day of luck since. Did you? Did you talk the other girl at Hot Topic? She is hot. God, I wish. Anyone can name a character once per stream. Oh, as long as there's a character whose name isn't. Oh, right, because it was the unnamed one. Sick. Okay, keep that in mind. Oh, this one's gonna be messy. This is good. There's nothing wrong here. Right back. I'm a genius. Stream is currently in 2 parts. 2 hours of indie game development and 2 hours of playing games. We will again next week. What was the? Was it Tunic? Is that the name of the game with the little guide you playing on? You finished that, right? That was a fun little game. Boom. Here's the reveal. It's pretty good game. Didn't get the good ending on stream. Oh, you get it on off stream? That's fine. Good. Holy shit, that's incredible. Thank you so much. It does hurt my head because my head. Fix it. It'll hurt less. Not the cat. Coming from the cat board. Get out of here. Good ending takes some legwork, huh? Not the cat melon. It's me, the cat melon burglar. Here to come down. Mouth. There we go. Give me all your money. I've got a spoon. Now if I can get you. God, that means we're almost over. One more thing, and then I'm gonna end the stream. I'll be right back. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do. I can't do. Ah! I did it. Oh, I did. Oh, I did it. Oh God. All right. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you so much. Hit the follow button and see more. Thank you for following. If we're having a good time or not, I can't tell either. I can't tell either. It's a bit of both. Egg and watermelons, good for your hair. End it, 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 end it. Thank you so much for watching. See you eventually. Oh my God. Oh God. Thank you for the follow. You be well as well. Oh my God. We're gonna raid Explosive Rubidium. I see them all the time. They play Minecraft. I actually canceled it, so fuck you. Actually, fuck you, Explosive Rubidium. But we're gonna go see them, and it's gonna be cool and fun. And I'm gonna wash this watermelon out of my hair, and also the egg, I guess. Oh God. Again, thank you so much for watching. I'm so sticky. Please help me.